Hi, this is RGK. Today I'll talk about the horror game Stifled. Stifled is based on an echolocation mechanism to see the environments around you. I would have liked to say that it's unique, but we have also seen this in another game named Perception. Perception was developed by the Gattai Games with Irrational Games veterans, Bioshock. It was closer to walking simulators than Stifled, and when the ghost appeared, the player had to run and hide just like in most horror games. Thus, despite the blind main character, just more narrated than your average indie horror game. As you might have noticed from watching my videos, what I'm most interested in is rarely the story, it's mostly the game mechanics. Good news, Stifled does this better than Perception, while also allowing you to rebind your keys. Stifled was developed by Gattai Games from Singapore. I played a prototype back when I lived there, and the game threw me directly in with a monster without knowing how it played. I didn't like it. Since then, I'm happy to report that learning has been improved and it plays really well. Echolocation allows seeing the world around us in wire art. To activate the echolocation, several possibilities. Either simply walking resonates on the surfaces around, a bit less while crouched. Either pressing more or less the spacebar can make our character talk more or less loudly. Somebody? Or using our own microphone is the best way to play. Wah! Indeed, the monsters are attracted to sound, so you can imagine having to remain quiet while coming face to face with some sort of weird deformed giant baby and its blood-curdling screams. Ooh la 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 la. Actually, those babies are still very practical, you can see them walk. The further you go, enemies become invisible and you will have to think twice before opening your mouth to explore your environments. I really like this voice mechanism. I felt very immersed in the game and it's less artificial than having to press a button to use an intermediate character. Oe! Oe! There is also a VR mode, but I don't have the gear to try it out. In the last third of the game, the monsters are completely invisible, only their steps can be seen as they walk in water puddles, and it reminds me of the best moments in Amnesia. I will take a moment to explain why this specific sequence works so well in Amnesia. An invisible and stressful threat, whose presence was clearly visible, ripples in the water, with knowledge of where the danger is, water, against the knowledge of safety and relief, outside the water. And an awful way to distract the monster, throwing human pieces. From a game mechanism standpoint, it's much more fun and dynamic than having to wait and hide, because in those hide-and-seek games the monsters become a repeated hindrance that frustratingly stop progressing for a time while you get bored inside the wardrobe. It's just cheap stealth mechanics. With what we see in Amnesia and Stifled, on the contrary, we can move forward while fooling around with the monster. It's as much a companion as it is an antagonist. It's more about playing and enjoying the interaction rather than stopping to hide in a wardrobe hoping not to get seen. In Stifled though, it's not exactly like in Amnesia. The main difference is that you can find yourself safe even though you're right next to a monster, as long as you remain silent and still without making any splashes. It's still a very tense moment, and if you make a peep at the wrong moment, then you can soon witness scary red things rushing your direction with a dreadful howl. Very stressful. Something that Stifled is missing is that you don't distract the monster with chunks of meat, but with simple stones. Graphics are clean and easy to read, I like the wire art, but it seems much less scary than a creepy atmosphere. There are also more conventional horror scenes, like in your usual walking simulator in a house that seems to be haunted. Some jump scares might work on you, but they are very light, nothing heavy-handed. Contrary to a lot of similar games, there aren't many combinations and codes to find or puzzles to solve, just one single combination at some point. It's more pleasant that way. I hate it when it becomes about backtracking at a slow pace. Well, actually, I did find the movement speed too slow for my taste, and there is no sprint key. The start of the adventure was a bit strange. It's in a room that seems to be foggy because the echolocation is already in place, but not the wire display. Also, I never understood how it related to the story, as the main character is not blind. Since we're talking about the little flaws, towards the end the game recycles the invisible monsters far too much. It starts to become repetitive. It takes roughly 3 hours to complete the game. At least there are lots of checkpoints, so it's not too frustrating to try again, and overall the levels are very well conceived, and there are always little tricks with the lights to guide you towards the next section. To conclude, Stifled is one of the rare indie horror games with interesting monster sequences. It's a nice change of pace from the usual hide and seek that I cannot stand anymore. Stifled is pleasant to play, even though the walk speed is a bit slow, and the last third overstays its welcome a little bit. Sadly, the wire arch does not feel real or disturbing, but playing with the microphone increases immersion and tension. The game is appropriately stressful, but in terms of horror it's not as impressive as what we are used to seeing. Up to you whether you think that you will have fun fooling around the monsters with echolocation, or whether you are more someone who needs a creepy atmosphere first and foremost. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!
From the National Weather Service to the following counties: Tallis County, Clark County, Chelan County, Gray Harbor County.